Today's roundtable is supposed to be really interactive, so please engage, ask questions, voice comments. We'd love to hear from you throughout. And we'll be recording this webinar and sending it to everyone afterwards, so no need to take detailed notes. But otherwise, Matt, I'll toss it over to you to take it away.
Hey everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. I'm Matt Charney. I am a principal analyst of industry and markets at Kyle & Co. And I am also the executive editor for Media Bistro. And I am really excited by today's panel. I've been researching high volume and hourly hiring. It's actually one of my primary topics this year. So I'm lucky enough to be joined by some awesome experts in it. So I'm going to just go around the slide clockwise, and I'll let everyone just introduce themselves and say hello, starting with our guest of honor, Miss Rachel Allen.
Thank you so much, Matt. Hi, as Matt said, Rachel Allen, and I lead talent acquisition for 7-Eleven. I'm actually a boomerang. This is my second time back at 7-Eleven. I just rejoined the last time at the end of 2021, so over 4 years now. And I too have had a lot of focus on high volume hiring, so a lot to talk about.
Awesome. Prem.
Awesome. Yeah, my name is Prem Kumar, CEO, co-founder at Humanly. So we help high volume hiring teams reduce time to hire, improve candidate experience through conversational AI. Before this, I spent a lot of time on kind of the buying side of the house at Microsoft, and I'm excited for the conversation.
Sweet. And last and certainly not least, Mr. Sam.
My name is Sam Fitzroy, co-founder of Dalia, and Dalia is a candidate conversion platform. We work primarily with high volume hiring companies to increase the conversion of candidates in most parts of their top of funnel, but mostly on the career site and sometimes in their CRM, and increasing the connection, engagement, and conversion of those candidates all the way through to hire. Prior to Dalia, I worked in the HR tech space, mostly on the job board consumer side. So yeah, with Dalia, we've really prioritized the job seeker experience, the consumer experience, and I think that's where we've learned the most. So yeah, I have some interesting data to share around that regarding high volume. Looking forward to it.
Well, welcome everyone, and thank you so much. And with that, just want to lay some ground rules for how the session works. So it's gonna be a roundtable. So again, we're just having as much of a conversation as possible. We'll be sharing some data points, but I would encourage anyone who has a question to just enter it into the box, and Birch will interrupt us because that's what we're encouraging. Beyond what we just heard, and a little at the end, no sales pitches. So we're not going to be selling products, just moving ideas. And we're going to be honest about not only what's working, but what's not, and hopefully be as free of buzzwords and BS as possible. So, all right, there we go. So we're going to set the scene a little bit on the state of high volume hiring. So as of this month, there were obviously the employment numbers, which came out, were a little depressing, to say the least, but that's an aggregate number. And when you break it down, interestingly enough, there's still a tremendous amount of open jobs that employers can't fill for hourly and frontline work. In fact, last month was 6.5 million hourly job openings to accompany 3.2 million quits. So what you're seeing is a high fire labor market across the board, but that's also starting to bleed into high volume a little bit. And a Dalia benchmark, one of Sam's data points, is that 60 to 80% of applicants drop before starting an application, and up to 50% drop before first human contact. So without, I guess, those statistics in there in the process, that quit rate and would probably be a lot higher, and the job openings would probably be a lot lower. So with that, I want to start off by asking Rachel, just looking at the last 12 to 18 months, what are some of the biggest changes you've seen in terms of candidate behavior and high volume, and how has it forced your team to adapt?
Sure. And I want to make sure you can hear me. Yes. Okay. Yeah, we have done a lot of changes, but prior to doing the changes that we did explore a lot of where our concerns and issues and challenges were. And the behaviors of our candidates had definitely changed and was different. And I think everybody is aware of this one, right? The mobile first. And really it is more of a texting conversation that candidates are seeking rather than forms and processes. So they want to feel like they're talking through how to get help with their application. Um, and really, there's zero patience for any friction in the process, which is an interesting dynamic because there's been such an increase in number of applications and flow. From the other side of the wall, you're wanting to add some friction potentially because there is such high volume, but our candidates are telling us that they have zero patience for that and they're going to drop if it seems a little bit too hard. And then just the way that they search for the roles looks a little bit different. Not really focusing on maybe what the job title is, but more of a shift mindset, as in what's my flexibility, what's the time that I would be working, what shifts can I have, can I be flexible in what those shifts are, or I always want the same shift. Then proximity, is it easy to get to? So the way they think about where they want to go to work is a little bit differently than searching just purely for a job title. That's not what they're searching for. It's more proximity and is it flexible in the hours that I actually want to do. So those were some of the things that we really saw are when we looked into what our candidates were wanting.
Awesome. Awesome. So I guess with that in mind, I want to just turn over to Prem. Obviously, you work with a lot of high volume employers and hear a lot about what's going on. So I'm just curious, what are the major challenges or new issues that you've kind of seen come to the forefront over the last year or so as high volume becomes more in demand?
Yeah, no, I'll certainly echo what Rachel was describing as well. I think we've also seen a lot of AI tools, and there's some great ones. There's some not so great ones on the job seeker side that have led to also higher application volume, so it can be easier to apply. I think as far as turnover, so in or basically first week, first 3 months, that continues to be a problem, particularly in QSR and in a lot of the hourly space. And I think what we've found, as Rachel mentioned, candidates are looking for a frictionless entry point in conversation, but making that two-way so they're also able to evaluate the company and really get those shift questions answered because it is a lot more than just the job description. So we found that a challenge, but an opportunity is can you get these large volumes of folks into two-way conversations as quickly as possible and then move to the next step. And the other point I'll make in this space is many of these candidates, I'm sure in the case of 7-Eleven, I've seen some data from Disney. Some of these candidates can also be great customers of yours in B2C context. So I think engaging with everyone in scale in a two-way format is something that's a challenge, but of interest. And then the friction thing is, they appreciate using AI, but only if it really works, obviously. And there's a lot of stuff out there that, quite frankly, doesn't work in the way that it's positioned. So I think that's another thing, trust and sentiment with the tools and is something that comes up a lot.
Awesome. And then I want to drill home a little bit on that AI point with you, Sam. So, obviously, coming out of the world of job advertising, you have this increasing problem of the AI arms race almost, where candidates use AI to optimize resumes and mass apply. I guess just echoing what employers have done for quite some time. So, how do you think that surge in AI generated applicants or fake applicants has changed the way that high volume hiring works? And do you think the employers are worried about losing that human touch and all that noise?
I mean, from the employers that we've talked to, they're definitely worried about losing the human touch, especially as, the human is removed from more parts of the top of the funnel for high volume hiring. And sometimes it's a good thing, sometimes it's not a good thing. But in terms of like the AI impact on high volume, we haven't seen a ton of fake or spam or that type of like AI created applications for high volume companies inside of their ATS. So that is not something we've seen make its way all the way through to like a fully complete application in the ATS. But I do think some of that might be happening on like third-party sites, job boards, et cetera, where it's possible to submit applications at volume. Rachel, curious if you're seeing the opposite at 7-Eleven, if it is getting into the ATS. Looks like no.
No.
But yeah, I think like it's a huge challenge. One, job seekers want things to be easy, and especially in high volume when they're using their phones primarily, and as Rachel mentioned, text. So I think you have to do both. You've got to make it easier for people so that you increase your ability to find the right person faster. But you also have to make sure you have the right information about people so that you know if they're a good fit and they know if they're a good fit. And so I think that's the challenge is like, how do we use this technology to make it one really simple for people in the native channel that they're comfortable with, which might be text, it could be voice, who knows. But at the same time, because that experience is so seamless, you have the ability to collect the right amount of information from them very quickly.
Awesome. Um, so hold on to that thought before we segue into that session. I want to loop around and ask Rachel. Recruiting's broken, at least according to every presentation vendor deck I've ever seen. So my question is high volume hiring broken? And if so, like, what does that actually look like day to day for people who are actually doing recruiting operations?
Yeah, I don't know if it's broken per se, but it has not been a priority when it comes to recruitment. And so it was always just kind of left behind, which is unfortunate because it is the heart of a lot of organizations for us. Yeah, these candidates are our customers. And so we need to make sure that they have a good experience, regardless of if we end up hiring them or not. But the majority of the focus historically around the recruitment process has been at what we call non-store for us, which is the corporate type hiring. So I guess, yeah, over time it became broken purely because it was forgotten. And yet it's the heart of the business and where it should be a priority. And, prior to technology being a potential solution to helping us handle it better, you threw bodies at it. And it was usually, you know, inconsistent because it would be nationwide and usually decentralized, and everybody was doing something differently. So our candidates weren't getting a consistent experience. It also was just so much busy work. There's all the manual screening, all of the rescheduling, chasing the no-shows, copying and pasting between different systems. And in a high volume world, that's just exponentially higher than the normal, non-high volume recruitment. The whole, black hole is even bigger in the high volume space because historically you were using evergreens always on. You had zero view into what was actually happening. And so people could be in the black hole forever and you kind of just didn't know. There was no way to really see that. And then because there wasn't consistency and it was so spread out and it was decentralized and there wasn't technology and it was forgotten, you had managers circumventing the process. They felt like they had no choice, and so they're hiring outside of the process, hiring offline, not using a system at all. And so then you really don't have any visibility into the data that you need. And we always talk about making data driven decisions, and at the high volume space until recently that was practically impossible, where it's probably needed the most. So it broken looks like a whole bunch of speed bumps everywhere. It's like, I guess, moguls. A lot of them are hidden until you're on top of it and you're breaking a leg, until you're like actually watching the candidate. So, yeah, that it had gotten to a place, but I think, are those in the in the space where we have a lot of high volume recruiting, we became very vocal, and started saying, what there's got to be a better way to do this. This is the heart of our company, at least. And technology is finally in a place where we can provide a better experience for our candidates, at least.
Awesome. And just so I can help everyone level, we talk about high volume.
Yeah.
Your team, about how many recs do you handle at any one time?
For at the store level, we hire about 100,000 a year.
Okay.
And um, there's only a couple hundred on at any one point right now versus we used to have 7,500 to 10,000 evergreens open all the time. And the way in which we've changed the art process, it's no longer an evergreen. It's a toggle on or off when there's a need, and we're down to hundreds versus tens of thousands at a time, which has been a huge shift in providing a much better candidate experience.
I mean, the most I ever did was 60. So that's still a really a pretty impressive number. Bert, let's go on to the next section, just in the interest of time here. Okay, so let's talk about like where the funnel actually breaks. So just looking at conversion reality, just some benchmark data from Dalia, the career site to application conversion, generally that tends to be under 15%. You have a materially higher mobile abandonment rate than desktop, and any form that requires multiple steps, you'll see your drop-off rate double. Conversely, speed really matters, much more so in high volume, and I think we've already alluded to this than everyone else. So if you can respond to an application, I know this is a pretty big task, but this is where automation comes in. In under 24 hours, you're going to get an interview bump of around 30%, and anything over 72, they probably have forgotten about you and are moving on. So, with that, I'm going to start off with you, Prem. Like just kind of looking across your customer base, where in this funnel are you seeing the most significant drop off? And what are some of the strategies being deployed to fix it?
Yeah, a couple things. So we partner with companies that are on the career side of things, and I certainly am seeing quite a bit of drop off when folks come to the career side, or if you're really trying to build a pipeline of candidates and not so much simply filling a role. There's a lot that can be done to at least convert them to a next step in a talent community, not necessarily all the way to close. Similarly to our website, when it just had a demo, when we in the past had a giant demo button, we were trying to get too quickly to converting sales prospects. So I think the journey needs to be considered, but career site's one of them. There's also some corollaries to customer service here. When I started at Microsoft, I was within our operations center, and we measured a lot of different things when people submitted support tickets. But when we started aggressively measuring time to first touch, what we found is that the people that we got to fastest, even in automated format, if it was useful, were most likely to have a great experience, even if their issue wasn't resolved. So people that had their issues resolved that simple fact was not enough. It was if you didn't have that initial quick touch. So that's something I think is also interesting. And then I think the other thing, maybe not talked about as much, is conversion between a rejection email to active talent community person. You're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on job ads to attract candidates, and then 95% of them don't get to the next phase. So what can you do with a real estate like a rejection email to convert people to be in your talent pipeline for future? So that's another area that I think there's some opportunity.
Sure. And Birch, if you don't mind moving to the next slide, this is a little bit cleaner, I think, on some of these data points. Under Humanly's conversation data, I think that there's a lot of good stuff here, but I'm just curious. When it says SMS engagement significantly outperforms email, that should really come as no surprise. And I'm just curious, Prem, staying on you for a minute. For frontline roles, like oftentimes a mobile friendly or a mobile optimized site isn't enough. Have you seen anyone, or Rachel, have you maybe even tried to experiment with like a frictionless hiring, like applying via WhatsApp or SMS that doesn't even require a career site?
Yes, we do. It doesn't require a career site for us. You can go direct into the conversation. At our stores, we have a QR code that our candidates can scan in the moment, and start texting with our assistant. Her name is Rita, and they can start texting with Rita and through conversation without ever going to the career site. Rita will often direct them to it because there's, or directly to a video maybe we have housed there, or some information of, hey, in preparation for your interview, go check out some of this stuff. And maybe that's where we're housing it. But no, you don't have to go to the career site for our high volume application process.
Yeah, and I'll also add to that, like I don't think solving the career site conversion problem is simply about optimizing the career site. It's about having these other channels that are there at the right time for the right candidate.
At 100%, right? Fish where the fish are. So, Rachel, going back to you
Mhm.
for a second, we talked about 7-Eleven's huge scale, and just looking kind of across that 100,000 rec load. How do you diagnose whether a conversion problem actually is a career site issue, a screen
Mhm.
issue, a speed to contact issue, or something else in the funnel?
Yeah, we have to make some assumptions based on where we're seeing the drop off. And, prior to um, the new process that we have and the new technology that we had, we were making some assumptions, um, that weren't data driven. It was just, we think this is what's going on when we talk to other people, when we, randomly we'll call some of our candidates and ask what happened, but now that we can see a little bit better, we can actually see some correlations that if, you know, um, if they drop off, before even completing the application, potentially it is career site, or the access to the starting of the conversation. Maybe the QR code was confusing, or the conversation with the assistant was going in circles, or something like that. But if they finish, they go through that process, and where we consider them qualified or could move on, and there's drops there, um, we will maybe assume that the scheduling potentially was taking too long, and we lost their interest because we didn't make it fast, and it wasn't fast enough. And then if they don't actually show up for the interview, we can usually assume that it was too much time between our interaction, and actually getting the interview scheduled. And then something that was important to us is really tracking how long it takes to a meaningful conversation, meaningful text or context, or meaningful human interaction, potentially from start of the conversation to, um, getting some meaningful engagement or interaction, or some time, how much time they're engaged with us. We were starting to look at that. So now that we've automated 95% of the process for us at the high volume hiring, for us, we were trying to break down our funnel with all those different things, from this to this, where's our drop off, from this to this, where's our drop off, if there are no shows, what does that mean? And now really, it is, we went from a couple of weeks to hire to less than 3 days, but it is minutes
Wow.
from application to actual interview schedule. So we're not seeing the drop off through the process anymore. And we're really kind of looking at how long they stay with us. The stickiness of the hire is where we've repurposed our, data points, or what we're looking at right now, because we're not losing them in the original conversion funnel anymore, which speaks to the speed part. And yeah, speed's important, but there are other aspects that you need to consider. But to me, speed is now table stakes. Um, you have to have the speed, or you can't even play the game. So that's where we are right now. We really don't have any ghosting or no shows anymore, which is crazy.
Sure.
So the speed itself is really what solved that, which is interesting. So now we're really looking at what's our retention rate, how long are people staying, how quickly are they up to speed on their role, and kind of, we've really moved focus from looking at the conversions within our funnel to how quickly we can get them productive to working, because the funnel conversion
Yeah.
within the funnel kind of isn't an issue right now. Could that speak to current economy? Yeah, it could. So ask me when that changes, when it becomes a candidate market again, let's see if that changes, but that's where we are right now.
Now that's really interesting because you're using essentially a talent management metric to
Yeah.
adjudicate talent acquisition performance. What, if any, like the strategies or input do you have in terms of things like churn,
Mhm.
voluntary attrition? Like how are you boosting those numbers?
Yeah, and it's been a really strong partnership with our operations teams because we are very clear that it's actually them that are held accountable to these metrics that we are providing them visibility to. So yes, we are the ones that can give them these metrics, these talent management type metrics, to review health of how their hiring is going, but really they're the ones held accountable to the hiring decisions. They're also the ones held accountable to the onboarding process and their training. We put a lot of focus on the first 90 day of training and surveying how they're doing within the first 90 days. And we've actually put it into scorecards. So like it's getting measured for ops. Did they complete the training in a timely manner in the order that they were supposed to and actually finish it appropriately before getting moved into different things before they were ready? And that's what we're starting to measure now. So we're using our training team's data to track, through our LMS, because that is what they use. Is that getting done? But we're holding operation. So it's HR data, it's learning data, and it's talent management data, but it is operations that's being held accountable to this.
Awesome. Wow, there's a lot to unpack there. I'm gonna move on to Sam. Sam, from Dalia's perspective, and I know you work across like a lot of employers. Um, are there any like common funnel mistakes you see teams repeatedly make that they don't realize are costing them applicants? And if so, what are those?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the mistake might be a hard word to use because I think this is something that every single company does because the system that they use is built on it, and that's requiring email address, especially in high volume. And we, stumbled on this over time, but like, I guess to echo what everyone else here was saying about speed in high volume, like speed is absolutely critical. We see that in our data as well. So for like the metric that we stand on is how much conversion lift do we provide to your career site or your CRM, and that all has to do with speed. So the vast bulk of the conversion increase that we deliver comes in a very short window from when the person first connects till when they convert. So it's not like, we're reactivating candidates who've joined 30 days ago. No, no, no. It's all within like the first 3 or 4 days. So the speed matters, but also it's the channel and you get the channel, like you get speed through the right channel. And so in high volume, increasingly people are just not using email address. And if that's the very first thing that you're asking someone to do is like enter an email address to apply to a job, you'd be shocked at how many people you're just losing from that. So I think, the big mistake is, well, you know, how can you unwind from this core requirement that's throughout all of your systems, which is email address? So it's kind of
Uh,
it's a big challenge. We've just started to do some work on this. But yeah, I think that's an opportunity for the space, less of a mistake, but
that's interesting. So the most fundamental thing we think of on the exempt side actually is an inhibitor to hiring on the high volume side. That's really
yes.
interesting. Huh. So, again, in the interest of time, I'm probably going to skip over a lot of this next section. Birch, if you want to move the slide forward, we kind of discussed a lot of this. Here's some statistics. And the one thing that I kind of want to ask, and I'll start with Preem, um, like, where do you see automation genuinely helping this right now? And where have you seen it backfire or create any problems? Like, because I'm sure there's some good and some bad.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
what are
I
you
mean,
seeing out there?
I think right now, like there are gaps in what humans can do with their scale in terms of when you are spending a lot of money to attract a large population of people, you would not have the time to have conversations with each one. And I think scaling first touch and having a productive first touch that can uncover silver medalist or pipeline for later is absolutely one. So in our world, that's the scaling of these two-way interviews or screening conversations. Keeping in touch with that talent pipeline is another thing that can be scaled with automation very well. And I'll also touch on what Rachel said, because I think it's important because we're hearing this from our customers, that conversion to a successful employee doesn't really end when they're hired, and especially in high volume when you have a lot of, it's like same day turnover or 1 week turnover. So we look at something we call employee lifetime value, which is a combination of tenure, performance, and engagement. So what are you doing in these steps before they come on board that may or may not be correlated to a high employee lifetime value? And even in the conversion funnel. So with one of our customers, we found by mentioning this particular topic about their benefits for this role in the initial chat with them, they would have a higher chance of the candidate going to the next step. So I think what is being said in these conversations, and then thinking about what you do once they're here, how do you make them a successful employee, not just someone to fill a seat? So I kind of answered your question, but
No, you did, and I'm stealing employer lifetime value. That's awesome.
Yeah, I like that.
I stole that from Greenhouse at SaaStr about 4 years ago, so maybe give them credit, but
No, we won't give them credit at all. Hi, Daniel. Just kind of flipping over, I guess, to Sam. So one of the things that I think is really interesting is we think about high volume candidates in a certain, I'd say, almost prejudicial way. But one of the things that's actually really driving this right now is we're seeing a shift in what, entry level and emerging workers. Obviously, there's been a huge drop off in the amount of available positions for them, and therefore, a lot of them are switching in to high volume and hourly roles as kind of make do. And you're also seeing the same thing with more experienced hires as well, at least according to Pew Research. Take that as you will. So, kind of given that a lot of people seem to still want that human interaction, or at least used to the hiring process, it's more traditional, exempt kind of hiring. How do you balance that automation pressure and pressure to speed with the fact that increasingly these candidates still want to talk to humans?
I mean, it's a great question, and I don't know that I have a good answer on that, but we've done a ton of testing trying to use AI models in the communication with candidates. And what we have learned is that it's very hard to make it human-like. It's like we found that's almost impossible, but we're very early days on it. And so it's better to kind of just be upfront and disclose and be very transparent with people when you're communicating through an AI model. And then that kind of increases the back and forth response. It makes it a better experience. So I don't know yet. I think people do want the human connection. And I think if there's something that's not that in the process, the best thing to do so far with what we're finding is just be really transparent about it. And if there is a human touch coming, like just try to get it quickly, or get them out of your process if they're not a fit and recommend something of value to them as quickly as you possibly can.
Sure. And I just want to, you made an important point, I think is really important, that transparency is a completely separate, although somewhat tangential issue to compliance. So just because you don't have to be transparent doesn't necessarily mean it's not a good idea. And just because you're being forced to be transparent for the sake of compliance doesn't necessarily mean that you should stop there. So just, I think that was a really good point, Sam. And finally, like Rachel, this is the thing that I still have trouble understanding. Automation, great, we're at this frictionless, quick process. And at the same time, that was the goal of candidate experience. And now we're trying to make up for it again. So, like, how does a bad candidate experience, particularly an automated one, look like from the applicant side? And how would you or most TA leaders know it's broken? What are some ways to kind of keep a finger to the pulse of that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And, We did try really hard up front to diagnose, where does speed help us build trust? So what parts of the process are our candidates saying speed is actually where they're willing to, continue with us. So for us, we're a 24/7 operation. We've got candidates applying to us at 3 a.m. We want to interact with them immediately. We can't staff humans to do that. We can't have recruiters, answering emails or conversations at 3 a.m. So where does speed build that trust early in the process? And then that's where maybe we want to do the automation, and then understanding where, humans are necessarily in the where maybe you're needing commitment or context and explaining. And so just identifying where the human touch is the most important. And we were very purposeful in not removing human from the process, but just speeding up our candidates to getting to the humans and using automation to get them there. And we did ask our candidates, what do you like about the process? What do you not? And what was interesting on the high volume side, the part where they said they didn't like the processes where we entered the human into the process on our end. So it was, yeah. So everything else they loved, but then when the human came into the process, things would get yucky. Our store leaders would say, they would walk into a store and be ready for an interview and wait for over an hour because the store leader's too busy, or the store leader would say, sorry, can you come back another day? So when the human came into the picture, is when we saw some complaints. So we're focusing now on how can we upskill and improve the, where humans enter the process to make it as good as where the automation is. But on the automation side, for us, if we're looking at things, and if things are just taking too long in certain pieces, let's say they're in the chat, they've been chatting for, I don't know, 10 minutes and nothing's progressed to the next step, that's going to be an issue for us. We're going to take a look at that. If, we can identify if things go in circles, they answer the same way, or it's repetitive and they're not really answering the question. So those are some of the things that we're trying to look for. And then we also had to make sure, from the transparency perspective, make sure that we have visibility to what the pay is going to be from early on, and location clarity, making sure that that's not confusing, and making sure that the information that we are quickly providing, that where our technology is getting that information, the automated information, that we're making sure that that is staying up to date. It's not like the old days of chat where you provide the answers, but it's still, if things change, we want to make sure that if we changed it elsewhere, it's showing up in the answers that are coming. And then when we didn't at first, if we were exploring not automatically scheduling the interview, but the process was providing you're qualified, that's great, and then the next step didn't happen, so they felt like they were being ghosted. So we actually did end up automating the interview scheduling as well. So we automated up to the scheduling of the interview, and then the human enters the picture for the actual interview.
That's awesome. Bert, you want to flip over to slide 12 real quick, and we'll put a fork in the set. Yeah, I think we pretty comprehensively answered that. So just some best practices that have been identified in terms of impact of automation at scale. Automated screening reduces the recruiter workload on average about 30 to 50%. When the automation feels conversational, in other words, you're not entering like the opposite side of uncanny valley, you have much higher candidate satisfaction and better experience scores and outcomes. And this is like the big one for me. If you do not, even in an automated workflow, provide an indication into what the next step is and how long it's going to be, you're going to see a huge, huge drop off in terms of applicants who abandon the process. So, I think that, taking us home here, let's go to slide 14, Bert. Yeah, so we're going to just take a look at data quality and just how you measure quality. So starting with Rachel, I guess, obviously, like quality in high volume hiring, pretty hard to define. So how do you define it? I think you talked about a few of the factors, but when you're filling thousands of roles, and
Mm-hmm.
how much of that measurement's actually reliable
Mm-hmm.
as an average?
Yeah, it's hard. Quality of hire is hard regardless, non-volume or high volume or non. Um, and we've had to, I mean, we've taken the angle of some proxy information of um, some correlation data. For us, we've really been focusing on our retention and lowering the attrition rate. Um, versus trying to embed something in the application process to signal better quality or not. And so our focus is on training our the hiring managers, which in our case are store leaders, around what good looks like in interviewing and techniques, and bringing some consistency on, when you're asking a certain question and based on the answer, what that can mean, and how to try to understand fit within their store exactly. And that can help determine um, quality. But quite honestly, for us, the biggest impact is the onboarding and the training. So that's really where we're focused and holding our stores accountable now is the what does good look like in an onboarding experience, and then asking the new hires how was their onboarding and did they get it all of it in the time that they were supposed to. So holding them accountable to that. And then our hypothesis, if you improve onboarding and training, then attrition goes down. And we are seeing that. So that's what we're doing instead of measuring quote unquote quality of hire, um, because that's hard to do. In any case, at least on the high volume side, the time frame in which you want to gather data is shorter. You can start measuring it within 90 days. On non-high volume, you can't tell within 90 days if it's going to be a quality of hire. But at the store you can. So we start looking at, some performance data, and are they where we expect them to be within 90 days? So that's also a piece of it.
So just to drill in on the flip side of that, early attrition is a
Mhm.
proxy then for recruiting failure
Not
in
recruiting
this model.
failure. It is actually a proxy for um,
Mhm.
manager onboarding failure. So we've flipped the script. If they don't stay, it's not recruiting's fault because we've removed recruiters from the process. There aren't recruiters anymore. Our store leaders handle and own, are held accountable to all labor optimization, including the hiring. So they make the hiring decision, and there is no recruiter involved,
Absolutely.
which has
I
flipped
mean,
the
that sounds
switch.
great. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, and you can't lose in that reality, which
So we
which is
still
nice.
Yeah, it is nice. We still own it as a COE. So, right, my team owns the technology, owns the training on the technology, has oversight to the technology. If a store is having an issue with getting the hiring done, I have a call center team that supports the stores directly. So, we still own as a COE the recruitment for the store, but the hiring decision and process is owned by the store leaders themselves. So, if someone leaves quickly, there's no recruiter to blame.
Gosh, awesome. No recruiter to blame is the best solution that I've heard in any organization. So, moving on, Sam, I know that when we talk about quality or measurements, a lot of that starts at the front end of the funnel. Can you just talk to me about the top performing sources for high volume, not just in terms of conversion to applicants, but conversion to hires? Like, where should I be advertising these jobs and where should I be avoiding?
Yeah, and high volume is so different from any other type because of the velocity and the speed. So, with the companies we work with in high volume, quality, like we have a very basic measure, which is like application to higher conversion and we throw the label quality on that, but that doesn't mean quality of the person who's applying. It just means the quality of the pool of applicants in terms of their conversion to a hire. And there's so many factors. Like, for example, are you in the first 25 people to apply or not? And at high volume, when speed is paramount, if you're not in the first batch of 25, you might be the most qualified person, but you're not going to get hired. So there's so many variables in high volume that don't exist in other types of roles. So like we need a better word than quality for this, but like
Mhm.
how can you look at the sources you're advertising on and optimize for the best source for the best type of job? I mean, a lot of this has to do with what happens post-apply and, how quickly you're hiring, getting through those people who do submit an application. But the data seems pretty consistent across all of our high volume customers that when people apply on the career site itself, the likelihood that they get hired is dramatically higher than from job boards or paid sources. So we see that hands down across the board consistently. And then in terms of the paid channels themselves, I'm not gonna knock on the big bad, player in the space, but conversion to hire is dropping on some of the major paid channels, and I think that's because volume of applicant is increasing from those channels, and so therefore the likelihood of any one of those candidates getting hired is just lower for that fact alone.
Indeed they are.
Indeed, they are.
So, premier data guy, and you might not even have an answer to this, right? But kind of just knowing the whole automation suite, like have you seen any across any clients an ability to predict which candidates will be high performers or like quality hires based off of anything on application behavior?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff not done well in trying to get correlation without the right data, but I'll share what I have seen, and I'll also kind of going back to 7-Eleven. I think that's a script that needs flipping in terms of what's happening on the onboarding side. I think managers or store managers, when I hear the term, "Oh, that was a bad hire," that's really a cop out in many ways. It's usually bad onboarding, which is interesting. So as far as that piece specifically, so I have seen strong models, and we have some of these just around like uh, topics brought up and how in the interview from an employer brand standpoint and how the different ones convert per hire. So if the talk track goes like this or the anatomy of the screening conversation happens like this, you're going to have a higher chance to convert. I also think like going back and going to a previous topic too, but when I think about like earlier in the funnel, when I say getting everyone into a two-way conversation, it is really two-way. So you're getting their questions answered. And I think when we think about human experience, like we kind of have to break down what parts of the human experience do we actually want, and which parts. I wouldn't say all humans deliver human experience in the same ways, and I would say technology in some ways can scale some parts of that. And the reason I mentioned that in an answer to this question is I think if you can get the good parts of human experience scaled to everyone up front, you're going to have better conversion and hopefully less drop off if they know enough about the job, about enough about the shift schedules. But yeah, those are some of the things we're seeing. But no, don't have specific data on I guess the structure of the conversations you have to even the speed at which you're speaking. Right now, my speed is not optimal for talking to a interview candidate. We've seen a lot of bias where we looked at hundreds of thousands of phone calls and Zoom interviews in high volume and not, and one horrible stat, women were getting 8 minutes less to even speak. So I think there's a lot of things that like I think if done the right way, AI can scale the good parts of human experience at the right points in the conversion funnel, the conversion doesn't stop until they actually become a productive employee. But that's what we're hoping for.
Awesome. Bert, in the interest of time, let's jump to slide 17. We'll just talk not different 17, I guess. Yeah, tech stack reality check. The one right should be right after that. There we go. So Rachel, if you had to be honest about your current tech stack,
Yeah.
like what's the one tool or platform that isn't delivering what you thought it would when you bought it? Or a pass?
That's hard to say because I think my expectations were set accordingly, so it lived up to where I thought, but what I would desire more in general, and not even my tech stack directly, but ATSs in general. We need to rethink how that works in today's world. versus it, it has turned into the recruiter experience feels like activity for the sake of activity of manually pushing stuff through without adding value to what they're actually trying to create as an output. So how do we do that? How do we think differently about ATSs? I think that's the biggest one. And then just in general, for all technologies to play nicer together instead of purposely making our lives harder. And oftentimes using the guise for the candidate experience as their excuse as to why they're making our lives harder, right? When really, no, you're not. That's not really why you're doing what you're doing. So if everyone could just play nicer together and make it easier for us to create the right tech stack for our company, and each company is different, that is what I would like to see. I also think we need to be very careful that we don't blame AI and the way it's going for not working when we have a crap process to begin with, because sticking AI on top of it just exasperates the issue. So I think we're at a great opportunity to rethink, take technology out of the picture. What do you want the experience to be like that you're trying to deliver both to the end user as far as like the recruiter as well as the candidate? And then how can we help influence our technology to support the type of experience we want to provide versus what they've been doing forever, which is forcing us to fit into their experience, their process that they built in their technology. So yeah, I think also what I found is that an okay tool, but good enough that fits what I need is way better than the most amazing thing ever that's kind of like on an island and not really talking to anything and getting anything done. So yeah, I don't know that I answered your question.
No, you did. That was very thorough and very diplomatic. So the headline I got was applicant tracking systems leave much to be desired. Which newsflash. Prem and Sam, just quickly, you both run companies that sell into the space. What is the most common mistake TA leaders make when evaluating or implementing new technology for high volume hiring? Sam, we'll start with you.
Using their computer to evaluate anything, just use your phone.
It's actually not the worst advice I've ever heard. That was good.
Just shut your laptop before you evaluate anything and pick up your phone. If you're thinking about it from like a candidate experience point of view for high volume, just don't even use your computer and try not to use email either. See what happens.
Great advice. How about you, Prem?
Yeah, no, what Sam said, I'll add a little bit, but I definitely agree with that. Yeah, no, I think there's a lot of promises out there, and I think it's I'm seeing much more like rigor and questions asked on RFPs, so I want to see that continue. I think that the gap between, if we're just looking at like AI interviewing, for instance, the gap between the bottom of the market and the top is the difference between my 7-year-old daughter who can read and talk, so she can read the questions to a candidate, and maybe a recruiter or a store manager that's done thousands of interviews over a 30-year period. So there's a lot of difference. And I think proper evaluation and not believing the implementation timelines without asking all the real questions and making sure the salesperson knows specifically what you want to do. That's what I would avoid.
Awesome.
Matt,
Which one
can I
is just
add
like,
something
oh
real
yeah,
quick too?
please.
Because and you've heard me say this on the other side of what we need to make sure we're doing when we're seeking technology. Make sure you understand the problem you're solving and what your overall business strategy is, and then technology is an enabler and a channel in which to solve that. But it should not be the driver. So don't just go after the shiny object and then figure out what you want it to do. Understand the problem you're solving for first, period, and then try to find a technology that can enable or support that.
Yeah, AI can definitely scale bad process to
Yep,
be more efficiently bad.
exactly.
As anyone who's read any LinkedIn update from ChatGPT could tell you. So final question, we're going to do this real quick. And I'm going to start with Rachel and then Sam, then finally Prem. What is the one thing that you want every high volume TA leader watching this to stop doing immediately, and what do they need to start doing tomorrow? Rachel?
Maybe I jumped the gun on that. I think, stop going after the shiny object. Start solving real problems, in real challenges and finding solutions. And again, more is not always the answer. The more candidates and high volume doesn't actually solve the hiring. It's getting the right candidates at the right time. And I think if there's one thing that would help is just an overall unified mobile journey period, right? Including background checks, I-9s, everything. Like, how do we get the whole thing into, native phone mobile experience all the way around?
Those vendors are very, very close.
Yeah.
How about you, Sam?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll kind of parrot what I said previously. What would I want every TA leader to stop doing now and start doing? To Rachel's point, really get inside the mobile world. So shut your computer. Don't use your laptop when you're evaluating job seeker facing technology. Just only use your phone to understand what their experience would be. And just walk through your current experience that you've got today on your phone the whole way, as far as you can get, and try to really think through, the volumes of people going through that experience, and you'll be able to spot the very obvious points of drop off.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And finally, Mr. Kumar, take us away.
I'll just keep it simple. I think asking vendors to give you a demo that you can play with on your own on mobile, versus just watching the recording or letting them do the full demo.
Great. So we only have 3 minutes left. We alluded a lot of the deck. If you're listening, thank you. You will be receiving a copy of the recording along with the full copy of the slides after this. I'd also like to, if you want to flip to slide 20, just give some shout outs. One, to Humanly. If you haven't checked out their platform, please do so. It's awesome. And has some great AI components as well. And then to our other sponsor today, Dalia. Dalia is a candidate conversion platform that really helps make traffic actually convert into qualified candidates using automation and personalization. These are both top-notch technologies, and if you're not familiar with them, I'm not just saying this because I'm sponsoring they're sponsoring the webinar, but definitely check them out. And with that, I'd like to thank our panelists and everyone listening for taking the time to make this a really interesting discussion. Thank you so much.